Sonic Rivals isn't a good game. I'm just making sure people know that before we start this. It's not a fun game to play unless you're playing with friends. The actual story mode is not fun. Probably don't buy it. Just don't buy it, okay? Okay. Alright. So when we last saw Eggman Nega, he had just been defeated and blown up by Supersonic and Burning Blaze. Soon after surviving that, he presumably was left in the Dimensional Rift exception, until he somehow escaped and went back to the future. But whatever, Eggman Nega is back and he's got a brand new plan for world destruction. And part of that plan is to disguise himself as Dr. Robotnik. On the surface, it is very easy to just roll your eyes and say, what difference would it make if he had come as himself? Well, it wouldn't have made a difference if he just came as himself, I'm gonna be honest. All the heroes would have just chased after him and stopped his evil plan. There's no way any of the protagonists would be hindered by him coming in his own skin. But that's only on the surface. What about the deeper meaning? What if the disguise wasn't for the heroes? What if the disguise was meant for Nega's benefit? Hang on a second, this is gonna make more sense as we go further into the story. Remember all those points I said to keep in mind as we move further? No? Well, that's okay. I've got them right here. Now is the time that all of this is going to come together. So hear me out, because I'm gonna be taking leaps with this information and it's gonna get really weird and kind of deep, like deep. So stick with me. What are all of these things a symptom of? They are symptoms of an individual with an identity crisis. Think about it. Why would he lie about who he is? Why are names such a big deal for him? Why would he put on a disguise of someone he hates so much? Because remember, Nega is very crafty and very intelligent, and everything he does is for a specific reason that he has thought out thoroughly. So what is the specific reason behind this? The only answer I can get from this is the classic clone complex trope. TV Tropes defines this as, and I'm paraphrasing here, characters that realize they are clones or believe they are clones are generally not going to handle this news too well. Some will lament their existence as disingenuous and will feel like hollow imitations of the original. Some will try to find a way to make their own life separate from their originator. Some tend to go insane and try to kill the original and take their past because there can only be one. Most of the time, the clones do basically all of the above. We've seen it before, I know, but wouldn't that explain all of this? Eggman Nega lies about who he really is because who he really is isn't a real person. He's a poor imitation of Dr. Robotnik. Why would he want to admit that? Let alone admit it to Dr. Robotnik, who he hates more than anyone else. That would explain his hatred for Robotnik as well. The classic clone complex firing on all cylinders. The clone that has fallen into insanity always lashes out at the original, because it's their fault that they exist in the world as a fake. So when he goes to Blaze's world where he can have some sort of identity that doesn't depend on Dr. Robotnik's, he takes the lie he tells to heart. He's not the copy of Dr. Robotnik, he's the doppelganger from another world, with a history, desires, and a life completely separate from Dr. Robotnik. This is why when Dr. Robotnik asks who he is when they meet in Sonic Rush, he keeps the lie going. He wasn't ready to give up the identity he had made for himself in that dimension. This would also explain the obsession with names. Names are a huge part of someone's identity, right? For someone with such a fragile sense of who he is, wouldn't it pain him to be called anything outside of his name? Would that not be an insult to everything he's going through to stand on his own and be someone? if a person was to call him Robotnik or just Eggman. Next, you have the unbelievable isolation that comes with being a clone. The overwhelming sense of loneliness and emptiness and just not belonging anywhere. As mentioned before, Nega has no one to connect with in a remotely positive way. The only person that he could have had that possible relationship with is the one person he hates more than anyone else. Bringing in the negative magnet comment, he's always going to repel the people that are like him. So not only is he dealing with all the emotional baggage and mental breakdown of being a clone, he's alone in the world. Completely and utterly alone. And he always will be. The clone complex also explains some other, even deeper aspects of Eggman Nega's character and personality. But I'll save that for later on. For now, just know that Nega is facing identity issues. Yes, he hates Dr. Robotnik more than anything. But no matter what he does, he's always gonna want to be Robotnik in some way. It's paradoxical, but that's the situation he's got going on in his head. He doesn't like this situation at all, but he can't help himself. He wants to feel real. And when people who already know Dr. Robotnik see Nega running around as himself, it destroys what little sense of self that he has. And believe me, he barely has a sense of self or an identity at all. So if he can pretend to be the only person he could ever hope to be, then he's gonna do it. Even if the person he's pretending to be is the one he hates more than anyone. Because it can take away some of the mental torment he goes through every day if people continue to refer to him as a real person and not the fragment of a person that he truly is. So that's what the disguise is for. Not for fooling others to achieve his goal, but to fool himself into feeling like a person for a little while longer. Continuing the rival story, according to the manual's prologue, a random island suddenly appeared in the present time, and the Master Emerald disappeared right in front of Knuckles. Sonic and Tails go to investigate the new island, but Eggman Nega, masquerading as Dr. Robotnik, shows them a card of Amy, claiming it was actually her. Now, here is where the writing gets horrible. I mentioned in my Cream videos that the writing quality, beginning with the infamous Shadow the Hedgehog up to right now, has taken a drastic drop in quality. Characters are liable to act nonsensical and barely resemble their true characterization from past games. Plot holes by the plenty start surfacing, and things just get all around bad as far as storytelling is concerned. So I'm going to try very, very hard not to focus on how bad the writing is, and focus on Eggman Nega and what the story does for his character. In this instance, the only reason why Eggman Nega would purposely antagonize Sonic & Co. is because of one flaw out of the great multitude he and Dr. Robotnik share. And that is revenge. Sonic beat him in Sonic Rush, so he's got a score to settle with the little twerp. Now, could he have just stayed in the background this whole time and gone around the world turning stuff into cards and eventually make the world into a card without alerting the heroes to his presence? Yep, but that wouldn't be satisfying enough for Eggman Nega. He needs to make the people that caused his plan to fail suffer before ending the world. Typical villain flaw? Yes. Does it work for him though? Kinda. So anyway, he turns Tails into a card to demonstrate the camera's power, and then Knuckles shows up screaming about the Master Emerald. Eggman Nega is forced by the writers to show the Echidna his Master Emerald card before baiting him to come and catch him if he wanted it back. Nah. Please just put me out of my misery. So anyway, that kick starts the game for Sonic and Knuckles. What about the other two protagonists? Well, their story begins in the actual game, because apparently they weren't worth talking about in the manual's prologue. Shadow gets a transmission from Dr. Robotnik to rescue him from someone. So he goes to the island looking for Dr. Robotnik when he encounters Robotnik Nega. I'm just gonna refer to them as Robotnik Nega, alright? Robotnik Nega sees Silver and says this obvious line that means that he knows who Silver is, despite this being his first appearance in this timeline since Sonic 06's events were erased. I don't want to get into it right now, but the Sonic series works on multiverse theory, which means that there are infinite other worlds / dimensions / realities identical to the current one we are in now. Yet, they have distinct differences among them that you can tell them apart from. If you've ever seen Justice League Crisis on Two Earths, or seen The Flash Season 2 or 3, or have watched Dragon Ball Z's Cell Saga in all of its entirety, you know what I'm talking about. If not, I'll explain it in more detail later. But for simplicity's sake, Sonic 06's multiple time jumps created multiple timelines, one where a character went through time and changed the past, creating another timeline with an adjusted future, along with one timeline where the events remain the same despite the time travel shenanigans. It can be confusing, so I'm just going to leave that there for right now, but I will come back and explain it later. Anywho, now Robotnik Nega is on the run, apparently snapping pics and picking up cards along the way. There's a boss fight and everyone moves to the next zone, where nothing interesting happens between Sonic and Knuckles' story pertaining to Robotnik Nega, so Shadow, finally getting away from Silver, believes he is in the company of the original Dr. Robotnik.
What? What? Hey! What? Hi. Eggman! Hey! 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 Huh. Damn. Shadow. Hey! Shut up! Bring it on!
Another marvelous performance of the ace writers of Sonic Rivals. If Shadow is giving you an option of being your personal bodyguard from Silver, freaking Silver the Hedgehog, the one character that can reveal who you are, but more importantly, has been known to stop your schemes since you started supervillaining, why wouldn't you manipulate Shadow into thinking you sent him the transmission and have him stall Silver for you? At the very least, you only have to worry about Sonic and Knuckles catching you at that point. But he does end up manipulating Silver into engaging Sonic in a small bout, which was apparently all he needed to stay a few steps ahead of them. Which is great, but why did you turn your brain off when it came to Shadow? That way you could have had Sonic being blocked by Silver and Silver being blocked by Shadow, which means you would only have to worry about Knuckles. But he just kind of leaves as Shadow gets a message from Rouge telling him to stay in the plot because he's one of the 4 playable characters and they couldn't afford to lose him so soon in the game. So Robotnik Nega is chased to the next stage, and while Sonic and Silver annoy each other, Shadow and Knuckles confront Robotnik Nega directly.
Doctor. Hey! Eggman. Fine. Bring it on! All right! Well, well. Hey! What?
Now that's more like it. Eggman Nega's manipulation skills are a lot closer to his original levels in this scene. But still, we're missing the vital aspects of his personality so far. His overly polite speech, the cold voice, the sinister mannerisms, the overall creepy tone, none of that is present here. Sure, he tricks Knuckles into being transported away from him, but that's just one aspect of his personality. What would have made this scene better is simply the way he handles his defeat. He could be more polite when congratulating Knuckles, lulling him into a false sense of security. Maybe he could give the card to Knuckles and mention casually that the Master Emerald card needs to be activated to restore the gem back to its original form. Knuckles could ask what he means by that, and Robotnik Nega could offer to tell him how to activate the card, prompting Knuckles to come closer and willingly give the card back to Eggman Nega. Then, once the Master Emerald card is back in his possession, he could say something cryptic, alluding to the connection between this new island and Angel Island, which could absorb Knuckles' attention even further, and if done right, could bring the creepy factor back in. Finally, Robotnik Nega could say something like, "Where are my manners today? You don't want to hear about this. You just want to return the Master Emerald back to its former glory, right? My apologies. Well, allow me to show you how to activate it." Then he could pull out a strange little device and Knuckles could ask what that was and the silence can return to the scene. Knuckles can continue to ask what the device is, but Robotnik Nega would just stare blankly at him. Maybe a smile slowly twisting to his face. Then he could say something about Knuckles, something strange like, "Correct me if I'm wrong, but when you die, your culture, your very species, will die right along with you, right?" This can take Knuckles completely off guard and hit him inside where he didn't know he was vulnerable. Then for another creepy line, he could compare himself and Knuckles without using their names or revealing too much about his situation. "Oh, don't feel too bad. I'd kill to be one of a kind." Then maybe Knuckles can lash out in confusion before Robotnik Nega says, "I'm terribly sorry, but our time is up. Have a nice day, wherever you're going." And just like that, Knuckles has been transported to an unknown location far away from Robotnik Nega. It's not perfect, but it's more than what the writers gave us. As for Shadow, Silver, and Sonic's teleportation, those could have been done so much better as well. I mean, this whole part could have been dedicated to getting the creepy factor back. Like in the example I proposed of a more compelling introduction, these scenes could have used all of those points to their advantage without that much effort. Again, this game doesn't really have voice acting and there isn't any animation for the cutscenes. They are literally just subtitles with still character pictures. So let's look at Shadow's scene and see how to improve it. Okay, so the obvious problem here is Robotnik Nega is not present in the scene at all. It's like he's way somewhere, wielding a sniper rifle with teleportation bullets. No. Let's fix that. How about we give this scene the same vibe as Knuckles' scene? The Doctor has lost to Shadow and now he's going to give him what he wants. Or so it would seem. Shadow wants to know his secret, so Robotnik Nega could pretend to begrudgingly divulge information to Shadow. Information that doesn't seem to be connected to anything going on right now. Alright, Shadow, you win. I'll tell you my secret. But you must promise to keep it between us. Shadow would agree, of course, and Robotnik Nega would continue with something like this. Perhaps it was useless from the start to hide it from you. Someone like you who knows what power secrets have. Shadow could probably respond with a disinterested, uh-huh. Then Nega could continue. You know something? It's interesting what a tiny little secret can do. Someone held at the highest of heights could be ripped down into the void of emptiness over a well-kept secret. That's because they aren't just little bits of information. They're pieces of who someone is. They are the keys to our identity. This could grab Shadow's attention, make him feel a bit uneasy as well. This makes them far more dangerous than anyone realizes, because the darker the secret, the deeper you dive into the psyche of its owner. A world that doesn't play by your rules, and whether you like it or not, you're suddenly on a ride into another's world. You get sucked into their reality, and if you're not prepared, this new reality can twist your own perceptions. And Shadow can try to say something to get Robotnik Nega back on topic. Maybe something like, well, what is the actual secret? But Eggman Nega can continue talking as if he didn't hear Shadow. They'll change you into someone else, something you don't recognize. Yeah, secrets are frightful, destructive little things. I don't envy those that have to spend their lives collecting them, constantly having to prepare their minds for the perilous journey they will take in order to gain a small piece of someone's identity. They have to constantly ask themselves the same crucial question. Are you truly prepared to take the risks? Now I can have Shadow ask in an uneasy tone, What's the matter with you, Doctor? Then after a moment of silence, Eggman Nega can give a creepy smile. Suddenly, Shadow gets a transmission from Rouge. Quickly, he takes the message, and this can all remain the same until Rouge's transmission dies out. Ah, so that's who Rouge is. I was wondering who you were talking about earlier. Shadow lashes out at him. What did you do to Rouge, Doctor? But Nega can calmly remain in control of the conversation. I'm quite sure she's the one that put herself in danger. Shadow, still frustrated, gets closer to him. Answer me, damn it! Now Robotnik Nega can bring it home. It's just a shame she didn't prepare herself for the risks. Let's hope you'll be better prepared. Now Shadow and the audience realize just what he meant when he was talking about secrets earlier. He wasn't threatening Shadow, he wasn't trying to intimidate Shadow, he was threatening Rouge the whole time. And as soon as Shadow realizes this, Robotnik Nega can teleport him out of sight. And scene.
Hey! What?
As for Sonic and Silver's scene, other than putting Robotnik Nega in the actual scene, what could help it would be building up the relationship between Silver and Nega. For example, Sonic could say something like, "It's over, Dr. Robotnik. Give me Tails and Amy's cards now." Then Silver could say, "Tell me where Eggman Nega is, Robotnik." And Robotnik Nega can laugh, making them ask, "What's so funny?" Then he can just answer after he finishes his laughter. It's uncanny. I mean, it's mind-blowing. then Sonic could ask, "What are you talking about?" "You're really just like him. You've got the same tone of voice, the same eyes, the same everything." Sonic gets closer and closer to him, finally screaming in frustration, "Who are you talking to?" Who indeed? That's it! Sonic makes a move to grab the cards, but Silver spots something on the ground in front of Robotnik Nega and moves quickly to try and save Sonic. "It's too dangerous to get close to him." "Hey, what are you doing? What?" Sonic touches the thing on the ground, a teleporter device, and Silver, too late to save him, is teleported along with Sonic. Again, not perfect, I'm aware of that, but it's better than the actual cut scene. So now that he's teleported everyone to Sky Park Zone, the writers have him show up at Sky Park Zone. Why? Because they're dumb. But he gets to interact with the characters a bit, and we have a surprisingly poignant moment here. After Sonic beats Shadow in a race, Robotnik Nega shows up to congratulate him.
You! What?
This scene is so much more than Sonic vs. Metal Sonic for the 39th time. It's more layered than that. Remember earlier about Eggman Nega's perpetual identity crisis? This right here speaks volumes to his inner conflict with his sense of self. Out of all the robots he could have used to combat Sonic with, he chose Metal Sonic, a copy of Sonic. And this isn't just a battle. Eggman Nega's proposal was exactly this. "Sonic, let's see if you really are the fastest thing in the world." He's not just trying to beat Sonic, he's challenging Sonic's identity. Sonic has always been referred to as the fastest thing in the world, / the This is part of his identity. For proof, you could ask any non-rival in the Sonic series who is called the fastest thing alive, and they will answer Sonic the Hedgehog every time. That's just who he is. To say, "Let's see if you really are the fastest thing in the world," is a blatant challenge to his identity. Because if he is beaten by Metal Sonic, then he can no longer be called the fastest thing in the world. Meaning, Eggman Nega would have taken a piece of Sonic's identity from him. Next, he challenges Knuckles.
Man. Well, well. What? What? Bring it on!
As previously stated, Knuckles' identity is wrapped up in his species and his heritage. He's the last echidna. His home is Angel Island, and the most valuable thing to him is the Master Emerald because he is its guardian. All of these things are essential pieces of his identity. Through the act of taking the Master Emerald, Eggman Nega has essentially threatened Knuckles' role as guardian, and therefore his identity as a whole. When Robotnik Nega reveals that Onyx Island and Angel Island are the same place, he threatens Knuckles' identity once more, implying that he doesn't recognize his own home. What's more, Robotnik Nega seems to have more knowledge of Knuckles' own home than Knuckles himself, further pushing Knuckles' sense of self. I mean, how would you feel if you lived in the same house all your life and someone came out of nowhere and told you that you don't live in a house, you live in a condo? And if that person continued to explain things that you should already know about your own house, wouldn't you question yourself? His taunting question, "Do you need an explanation then?" probably hits harder than it's conveyed on screen. I mean, Knuckles' entire being is linked to Angel Island. He's supposed to know every single thing about it. It's basically who he is. He's the only resident. But in a later scene, he ends up confused about his home. He openly questions his island. His sense of self is shaken because of this little exchange here. Then Robotnik Nega tells Metal Sonic to sick him, and I really think this would have been a great opportunity to bring back Metal Knuckles from Sonic R, or even Mecha Knuckles from Sonic Advance. We've got this perfect identity crisis battle for Sonic thanks to Metal Sonic. Why couldn't Knuckles have the same thing? But that's neither here nor there. Next, it's Shadow's turn to be confronted.
Doctor. What?
I kind of enjoy how this was written, despite the fact that I wish there was more creepiness and Shadow would react more angrily. The lines that specifically catch my attention are, "Why don't you test your metal against my very own Metal Sonic?" It's clever in that it's a pun that doesn't irritate me, which is a miracle, and that it vaguely compares the two words. Metal is defined as courage and fortitude, someone's strength of character. Metal is, of course, a fortified alloy known for its durability and general hardness. Shadow's strength of character and spiritual fortitude versus Metal Sonic's physical strength and durability. So basically, like Sonic and Knuckles, he's challenging Shadow's identity. That's a pretty nuanced and surprisingly intelligent comparison that I'm sure the writers did on accident. And the next line, "Why don't you show me just how unlike Sonic you really are then?" seems to come out of nowhere, but it actually makes perfect sense. First off, Eggman Nega is obsessed with identity, and names are a huge part of that. So why does he say, "Show me just how unlike Sonic you are," instead of anyone else? Simple. He believes Metal Sonic to be equal to the original Sonic in some way. Not equal as in strength and speed, but equal as in relevance to his world. Crazy? Yes. Incorrect? Not really. Metal Sonic is the robotic copy of Sonic. Everything it is has been entirely based off of Sonic. So when he challenges Shadow with this, he's challenging Sonic as well, seeing as Metal Sonic is technically a form of Sonic. Second, from day one, Shadow's identity has always been wrapped up in Sonic's. Everyone says he looks like Sonic. He's got basically the same abilities as Sonic. He's always been known as a Sonic copy. Remind you of anyone? How about the guy proposing this race? He looks just like Robotnik. He's got the same abilities as Robotnik. He's always been known as a Robotnik copy. The parallels are all there. So in some twisted way, Eggman Nega wishes to challenge a copy to be better than the original, something he has always strived to do, be better than the original. Even though it kind of falls flat, seeing as Sonic and Shadow had already raced like just a minute ago, and Shadow isn't on his side, so if Shadow wins, that means Nega loses. I still see where the writers were trying to go, but they just don't get there. And finally, we have Silver's interaction with Robotnik Nega.
Eggman!
Well, well.
Now again, the writers mishandle the characters. At the moment that Robotnik says, "Seems like you're quite perceptive," Silver should have immediately deduced that this was Eggman Nega. I mean, come on now. This scene is basically the weakest of the four, simply because Silver's identity isn't being challenged. Metal Sonic means nothing to him. He just met Sonic a few minutes ago. There's not much there. Although, if we look at the subtext, one could argue that Silver is a future version of Sonic, and so having him fight against Metal Sonic would make it seem like Silver's identity as the Sonic of the future is being challenged. Not to mention the fact that he says that outdated machine doesn't stand a chance against me can be considered Silver's counter-argument to Eggman Nega's challenge. Silver is saying he can't be compared to Sonic so blatantly because they come from two different worlds, and they're both comfortable with being who they are. They are separate individuals that don't borrow their identity from each other. Despite their similarities, Silver is his own person, and Sonic is his own person. But again, that's a bit of a stretch. The other ones were way better. Moving forward, our characters are still mentally dealing with the identity struggles that Robotnik Nega thrusted on them earlier.
Damn. Hey! Damn. Shut up! Hey!
I'm glad that Shadow is still shaken by the fact that Rouge is turned into a card and Robotnik Nega has taken her hostage over this secret. But I don't like how everyone is a jerk-off to each other for no reason. But, LOL, writers don't know what they're doing. So then we move to Crystal Mountain Zone, where Silver finally notices the red flags that have been waving since the game started.
Eggman!
Well, well.
Hey! What?
Now we're at the point where Eggman Nega has lost that false sense of identity he's been struggling to hold on to from Sonic Rush up to right now. I feel like this moment should have been given the creepy and silence treatment. I'm not going to do another example of what I would have done, but this needs to hit harder so that the viewers can understand why the disguise was necessary. When you lose something, that's when you understand why you had it in the first place. That is the old saying, you don't know what you've got until it's gone. So let's see Eggman Nega slip the audience some tiny clues about his identity crisis. Let's see the cracks form on his usual in-control attitude. Not too much, but just a little so that we know the disguise wasn't for the heroes, it was for him. Also, we see that Eggman Nega wasn't taking pictures just to be an asshat. He was gathering data for his plan, which we'll get into later. Don't worry.
Doctor! What?
Eggman. Damn.
Finally, he's done masquerading. He's done playing games with these kiddies. He's just done. He tells them what they've been wanting to know because why not? He's planning on destroying the world in a couple of minutes. It doesn't really matter. Besides, he's very annoyed with them asking him the same dang questions over and over again. In fact, everyone is done with the games. Shadow's short and direct demand for the truth is evident of that. I'm glad that everyone is saddling up to just end this, even though we're still only halfway through the dang game. Literally, just let me die for a minute.